Hello everybody, welcome to Gelvin Valley once more. We're in the middle of canola harvest on this fine map that Wild Wes created for Farming Simulator 15. Well, look at the wow in the ad fence. Sometimes the fences are crooked in Scotland. And Wes, if you ever see this, well, not Scotland, sorry, probably wrong area. Wes, if you ever see this, I'd be curious to know why the fence is S-shaped, kind of back there. But in the meantime, we just farm around it. Well, the last episode, I wasted all of your time for 30 minutes talking about why I have a YouTube channel. As if anybody cares. One thing, oh shoot, this is what comes when you talk and you don't pay attention. Alright, lock it. This is so terribly steep, and I have a non-hillside combine as I do this. And of course my truck is way over here, 42. You know, I think I'm gonna take this down and empty before I head over there. I think that would be the proper thing to do. So I'll just head on down over the hill. Anyway, I was thinking of a different topic, of course, for this video. And I was remembering a video that my friend Russell did. I saw it, it seems like it's been a few months back. And he covered a number of topics, I think, in his video, and one of them had to do with kind of a fun way of eating, where you would kind of go from one house to another. You know, maybe at one house you would have appetizers, another house you would have salad, and you would get in your car and drive to another, have the main course, and kind of so forth and so on. Just kind of something fun to do, you know, as a type of party, or I don't know what you call it. Things people do when they get together. Aha, let's see if my planes still come up. Ahahaha. There it is. Very satisfying to watch it come up. Just enough dumped in to send it over the top. That'll slowly recede, of course. You know what's interesting? I was just on a Farm Sim 11 map recently. I think it was a 4X map. I don't even remember what it's called. Some German map, I believe. And I noticed when I dumped some product that the plane rose. Kind of like I told you, I think it's been around ever since Farming Simulator 11, and so I found another modder who made use of it in his map. But anyways, I was thinking of Russell's video and the concept of food. You know, you can't hardly think of anything that should be more unifying to the entire human race. You know, of all things that we all have to do, sorry, Ped. One of them, of course, is the fine art of eating. And, let's see, yeah, I gotta come this way. I can't even remember the route. That's what happens when I talk and try to play at the same time. And so there's you know, I thought of I've also done the exact same thing that Russell was describing in my own social circle, and I can't remember what he called it or what they refer to it, you know, in New Zealand. I think up here we would call it a progressive dinner, maybe. progressive meaning you go from one to the other to the other. But I could be wrong on that. It could just be dinner on the road for all I know. Now, where's my combine? I think it was back along over here. There we go. So yeah, so I've done that several times. And so I was just thinking in terms of a topic, to mention and to ask, what kinds of silly things, you've done, in a group setting, when it comes to eating or that kind of thing. Just for kicks, just to have fun. And that obviously was one of them that I thought of. And I grew up going to church, and so I don't know how much of this has to do with that, in terms of the potlucks and dinners that we would have, fellowship, one with one another, but probably a huge part of it is from that. Around Christmas time, there would be a lot of, still to this day, Christmas caroling. And a lot of times, this wasn't intended to be dinner on the road or that kind of thing, but that often happened. You would go up to someone's home to sing to them, and pretty soon, the longer you stood there, maybe they felt bad for you if it was cold out. Out would come a plate of goodies or something and get passed around. And so, yeah, if anybody ever wonders why Americans struggle with obesity, some of us, maybe that's part of the reason. There's just so much good food and it gets handed out frequently. I guess the next item I put on my list here was literally singing for your supper. And I know I don't sound like, I don't have a very good voice. Everybody knows that. We've clearly established that. But when I was younger, I did a lot more singing. And honestly, it's one of the large frustrations of my life, that I can no longer really sing how I'd like to. I really enjoy it. That's something I consider fun, but I got this voice with some issues. But anyway, I still try. And so, we've occasionally had it where, as it's at Sing for Your Supper, I know that sounds just kind of like a saying, but I've, in our church group or whatever, that has literally been true at times, in just some of our gatherings where we would do that, before partaking of supper, or that would be kind of a wink, wink, nod, nod condition, if a host was having a bunch of young people over or whatever, that they would first sing for their supper. And we did that sometimes at home growing up. There'd be time to sing around the supper table with the family or whatever, especially as we got older. Another clever eating thing that I know we've done before, I think I've only done this once. I'd be really curious to see what Russell would think of it. And I don't know what it's called. All I know is here's how it works. You show up and there's no name tags, and there's just numbers like at a plate or something around the table, and there's various utensils sitting at each plate. And so everybody would draw a number to see where you sit, at the table, and then you have to eat your meal with whatever utensil or utensils is by your plate. And I remember one time, and people went daffy with this, they would put one of those handheld egg beaters. That was a utensil they would put out there. Or if you got a sharp butcher knife, and if you're eating soup, that would be your utensil. And of course, a lot of it was just a lark. It was all in good fun. So, people would generally try it for a while, and then the host would have mercy on everybody, and out would come the full set of utensils. Although there were always a handful of people who were pretty game on sticking with it all the way, to the end. And some of it may be dependent on what you were eating. If you're eating steak and you you get a turkey baster, well, you're going to be in for a long night trying to figure that one out. But yeah, I'd be curious to know, Russell, if that's something you guys have ever done, just kind of a fun thing to do. And I know I mentioned earlier a lot of the potlucks, sometimes pranks with the eating. Yeah, this comes now. I didn't even have this in my notes. I'm thinking of two of my brother-in-laws who, and I realize people will have sensitivities about this, but while they were young men, before they got married, for a while they trapped furs, of just local critters, that roam the woods. I can't even tell you what all. I guess raccoons and muskrats and nutria, that kind of thing. Well, and they also, some of this stuff they did was just nutso. They also would trap skunks, and a few of them that they were able to unalive, if I can put it that way. They would take the little sack of stinker stuff, or whatever you call it, out of them, and they had stars in their eyes when they were younger. They said, "Well, don't you know they put that in perfume?" And, well, I don't know. I have no clue what goes into perfume. But it wouldn't surprise me, that a perfume manufacturer, anybody that's ever been around skunks, know how long that odor lingers. So if there's a way to de-scent that stuff, maybe, and you give it the scent that you want it to have, maybe there is a way to use skunk bile or whatever that's called. So anyway, they would collect skunks, and anytime there was roadkill, they were out inspecting it to see if they could get a fur off of it or something. Well, anyway, these two yahoos were, I shouldn't call them yahoos, I love them dearly. But they were partners in our church potluck group, if you will, and they took a turn hosting. And they just so happened to have, it was either trapped or it was roadkill. They took some of it, I think they stuffed it, and they put it on the dinner table. And everybody's probably seen the classic, dinner table scene, where you have the roast hog, with his mouth open and there's an apple sitting in the mouth. Just one of those stereotypical dinner scenes. Well, I think they did something like that, put an apple in the mouth of a raccoon or something. Basically trying to give the impression that what was on the table is what was also on the menu. And, I don't know what they had on the menu, but I think it was, like I say, maybe would have spooked somebody, but I think they meant it in good fun. Another type of meal that I'm into that's intended kind of for large groups of people is, and I don't know what you'd call this either, maybe a random task meal. And this one really requires some coordination. My sister-in-law did one. Was that for New Year's this past year? Anyway, she calls me up out of the blue, sends me a text, I can't remember, and said, "Hey, at the meal that we're going to have, I want to try something just for fun and see how long it takes people to notice what's going on. So can you just, as we're there, the purpose is for New Year's, so anytime you hear somebody, or anytime you see somebody next to you take a drink, then I want you to start talking to them about math. Just something totally random. And it's a joke, so please don't tell anybody. Wink, wink, nod, nod. We'll just see how long it takes, people to notice." So I thought, well, that's kind of cool. So I resolved to do just that. Well, come to find out, she had called I don't know how many people and gave them a similar spiel, and it would be for something different. One person, I think one of my nieces was told, that if anybody wipes their mouth with a napkin while they're eating, you're supposed to shout, Happy New Year, because this was for New Year, right? And then others were given other tasks. If you see someone next to you take a bite of food, maybe pound the table, or start talking about some random thing that she gave him. And let me tell you, this was the most, well, of course, I come from a large family, so it's only natural that there'd be a lot of chaos in it as it is. But I don't think it's ever been more chaotic, than trying to do this. Because, first off, I discovered nobody wanted to talk about math, and someone saying Happy New Year over and over. And I said shouted. I was mistaken on that. I think it was just, tell the person Happy New Year again. Well, pretty soon you do that enough times, they think you're either a numbskull idiot or you're just jerking their chain or whatever. And yes, all sorts of patterns emerged, and yeah, it was fun. I mean, it's just one of those things, I guess people do when they're silly and want to try something new when they get together. And I'd be curious, Russell, have you ever done that one? And I still don't know what it's called. I don't remember if my sister-in-law had a name for it or not, but it definitely was a hoot, albeit a little frustrating for some of the time. I mean, not a very good way to maintain a conversation if it constantly changes to whatever whim or something someone told us to do when we saw something funny. We're almost done with this particular field. This combine really lays it down, no doubt about it. And I'm liking the tracks in the field, which wipes out even the stubble. Those were the main ones I could think of. I suppose the potlucks, would be kind of their own animal. My wife and I have been at those off and on, and it's set up at random, and where the times I've done it is mainly, with a church group. Sometimes it's been, with our entire church, and it's kind of like everybody. You're supposed to bring enough, basically, for your family. Hot dish, cold dish, maybe a dessert. And then you go, and all of these, of course, get set out on these tables. And then, we're a large enough group, we set up several lines. So there's typically, I think, 3 lines we've done. And so there's just a huge variety. I really enjoy it. And there's plenty there, so always way more than enough. But I guess it's a part of my culture, and it's one of those things it's easy to take for granted. It's just, and I don't know any better. I mean, these are just things we've always done, and maybe describing them seems kind of foreign to others that grew up differently. So there's been a lot of those. We have some potluck groups, kind of to really, and it maybe sounds self-serving in a number of ways, or as something that wouldn't necessarily be, I don't even know what the term is. Maybe self-serving is the best way to put it. But really, the whole purpose, our potluck group program, what we would do for those is whoever wants to, I think they renew it every single year, and the groups meet. Actually, no, it isn't in groups. I'm sorry, I'm mistaken on that. it's random groups. They redo it each year as to who's in it. And they ask who's willing to host and some of those kinds of things. So anybody that wants to can participate. And then somebody generates a list at random on 4 dates through the year. So each time you're with different people. And it's just interesting. When you have a church of a certain size, you're not able to get to everybody, on a given Sunday. And I don't know, I really don't know what the total number is for our church. There's maybe, I think we have about 500 people maybe that come, 400 or 500 people, somewhere in there. I'm not sure the exact number. Well, you can't see all of those people, and really, in terms of the way that, I personally see church, would be based on the Bible, and it's a type of family, right? So you want to know who your brother and sister is, if I can put it that way, and it's important to get to know them, and I mean, and I think it's for a very practical purpose. Like I say, maybe it seems self-serving. We're just getting together amongst ourselves and, eating food, big whoop. But I'll tell you, when you are put in with a random group, maybe these are people you haven't interacted with in some time, and it forces you to. There's nothing like sitting down with someone and eating with them, breaking bread, as it were, that does something in terms of, helping you know who you're meeting with. Some of my most cherished times growing up were at the dinner tables of family. Hands down, that was, I think, my favorite time looking back, when all of us were together, mom, dad, my siblings. I cherished that time. And I think part of the purpose is, when you eat with someone, I think it's that way now. There's all sorts of business people that take clients to lunch or take associates to lunch. And I think the world has just found that when you eat with somebody, something happens in that interaction that wouldn't otherwise happen in another style of meeting or venue. So that's kind of how I think of the potlucks. It is a way to get to know those that we're fellowshipping with. So, and why is that important? Well, and I think all of us would know this too, and this is probably why wars happen, how nations disagree with each other. I know there's lots of reasons. But you know what? We don't know a lot of times people in other cultures. And why is there so much problems, with racism and those kinds of things? And it's, those other people, they're weird, they're not normal, or so we think in our head. And it's because we don't know them. And when you don't know somebody, it's, all the easier to look at them with suspicion. And, oops, I can't see my... Let me get to automatic help. Unlock. Oh, good grief. Alright, locked and loaded again. Here we go. So, if you don't know your, in the context I've given in church, your brother and your sister, maybe you will have issues with them because you're not spending time with them. In the work environment, if you never interact with one another, it's maybe a little bit different there. But your family, I think we all can understand that, and it's kind of sad that it's getting lost. I think a lot more families used to sit down and eat together, and because so many of them don't, they are so missing out, I feel. I also grew up without a television, and I know when that silly box, is around, and hey, I get it, there's interesting things on there, but I think it's destroyed a lot of the interactions families could have because, people are busy watching it instead of interacting with each other. And, then wonder later, well, how come I feel distant, to my mom or dad, or maybe mom and dad don't care about me, or sibling issues. I don't know. I'm not trying to say our family's perfect or whatever. It's just, I think if we don't do some of those kinds of things, we are truly missing out on some of the most wonderful interactions, life-affirming and building interactions that you could ever possibly have. That's all I'm trying to say. Now, can he get in here? Yeah, I think I took the collisions off. Alright, maybe I can manage to keep from destroying these. Alright, lock that back to the combine. Here we go. Get out of here. So that's kind of a little pontificating on eating when it comes right down to actually, I'll maybe mention this one more time in the context of our church. In some ways, I think we're kind of unique in this. We typically have 2 services on Sunday, and I know there's churches that have lots more services, but it's common for our entire church to attend both. So everybody's present. When we're all there, everybody's there. We don't have multiple services with some people coming to some and some to others. But in between the services, we have a lunch that we serve literally at the church. When we get done with the service, we exit the sanctuary and we move right into a lunchroom. And we all take turns preparing it. My wife and I, we did this not that long ago. And you could choose whatever you want to serve to everybody. And there is, of all the traditions that we might have, that in my mind, as I've gotten older, is probably my favorite because it is so valuable. A lot of people anymore, they don't always know even the people they go to church with. And I already told you how many people are there. It's hard, to get to all those people. But when you sit down at a lunch table, you increase the odds that you'll sit beside someone, you'll have a good conversation, you'll get to know them a little better, and it just helps. It just helps, I think. One other comment maybe I would make here as the time kind of winds down when it comes to food is just the fun with different cuisines. I think I've mentioned before in here, that I enjoy making Chinese food. That was something I kind of got into. I've always enjoyed eating that. And, I kind of come from a German heritage or Swiss heritage. So I know growing up, Mom typically on Christmas Eve, kind of as a nod to our Swiss heritage, we would have a fondue supper and that kind of thing. But it's just interesting too with different ethnic groups. I just keep going back to church. It's a good chunk of us probably are the German and Swiss heritage. So a lot of the cooking and whatnot is, well, not even a lot. Who am I kidding? We're as American as anybody else. But I'm just saying that's kind of the tradition or background that many of us came from. So occasionally you'll see the ad in whatever is prepared or cooked. But we also have, there's Hispanic folks there. So we get to enjoy that. I don't know that we have any Chinese people. Yeah, I don't think we do. There's some Bulgarian. I think he's Bulgarian. But it's just interesting to see that, and you see it kind of come through too. I just mentioned like the lunches that we have on Sunday, and it's a regular treat to have, some of these other cuisines, when they're used to preparing food a certain way, and when they cook it for, and I'm not talking anything outlandishly huge here, it's not a major meal. So most of the time, I would say, we're having sandwiches, a few pastries, that kind of thing. It's fairly light. So, my goodness, if we had to cook it proper, whew, we'd probably have stopped it a long time ago. That'd be a lot of work. But it's really cool, even just in a group of people, to have so much variety. And kind of like I started it at the beginning, of all things that the human race does, eating is one of those things that unites people. You can't hardly sit down and eat with someone without leaving a part of yourself with them, and they also imparting something of themselves to you. It's just something that happens, in the conversations that you have and in the sharing that takes place at a meal, which is probably why it was so endearing to me, from a family sense. I mean, I miss those times, and I know with my own little family, it's the favorite part of my day in coming home from work and being with my wife and the kids that we still have at home to share a meal together and catch up with one another. So anyway, I don't know, this maybe was kind of a silly episode on something just common to all of us for eating, but hope you enjoyed it. I'm still combining canola, taking care of this tiny little field 41 with a massive combine. We're getting the job done. We'll see you all in the next one, and you all have a good day. Bye-bye.